Welcome, everyone. We'll get going here in a minute. Got folks filing in still. We are recording this session. It'll be available after we wrap up today. Just as a housekeeping, please feel free to talk and ask questions. We do want this to be conversational, but at the same time, if you're not asking a question, I just ask that we minimize background noise by keeping ourselves on mute. Let's begin. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time to attend the first of at least two e-ticketing sessions with NRMCA's IT task group. As you may know, the IT task group was stood up earlier this year and is part of the newly formed Business Advancement Committee. And this committee is focused on activities that support the financial success and performance of the ready-mix concrete industry. Of course, IT is a critical component of that. Before we get too far down the road, I want to just advise attendees of this meeting that it will be conducted in accordance with NRMCA's antitrust statement. And if at any time anyone has any concerns related to antitrust, please get my attention, and we will stop the meeting, address those concerns before continuing. So with that, today's agenda is the panel discussion on e-ticketing. We're very pleased to have a number of folks from companies who are leading the way in the adoption of e-tickets. I'm pleased to have co-chair of our IT task group here. We're going to have some discussion, and then we're going to open it for questions and additional discussion from attendees, talk a little bit about our upcoming meeting, and then adjourn. Our target time is 45 minutes, but we may end up at the 60-minute mark, and look forward to a robust discussion. As I said, we stood up within the Business Advancement Committee, an IT task group, earlier this year. It's co-chaired by Keith Onchuk from Ozinga and Luis Angulo from Cal Portland. We're very pleased to have Luis with us today. Unfortunately, Keith has come down with a cold and is unable to join us, and so Luis will be guiding this conversation. So with that, Luis, I will turn it over to you to talk a little bit maybe about the task group, and then e-ticketing in general, and then introduce our panel.
Very good. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. So as part of the IT task group that was recently formed, it's one of the key topics that we would like to elaborate on, learn about, and potentially influence the direction that we're taking is around e-ticketing. I mean, especially over the last few years with the pandemic and many different innovations around the digital front, we've seen more demand in some cases about being able to digitize our industry. So today we're going to be listening from 4 different companies that have taken this journey into e-ticketing, and the idea will be to basically learn from that experience, hear about how they started going down this path and some of the challenges that they've been encountering, and here's some advice as well, and some insight into where they see this process going. So with us, we have Jeff Davis from CLD Materials. We have Jerry Howard from Irving Materials from IMI. We have Roger Lasley from Advanced Ready Mix, and we have Alan White from Dolesi. So So let's go in this order in here. Jeff, if you can introduce yourself. And I'm going to start with the first question that we're going to be asking everyone. And that first question is, how's the process been like for e-ticketing implementation and adoption at your company?
Good afternoon, everybody. Jeff Davis from Sylvia Materials. I've been here over 30 years. So I've seen this go from paper dispatch to computerized dispatch to e-ticketing, and it's been a long journey. Started e-ticketing pretty much like everybody at the beginning of COVID. We were in the process of moving towards it, receiving a lot of pushback from our customers that they didn't want it. However, when COVID hit and then everyone was panicking about touching paper and handling paper, that was the impetus to really kick it off, and we were able to fully implement our ReadyMix division with e-ticketing through that.
So Jeff, who was the primary driver behind the initiative in Sylvia Materials? You know, when you say that, you know, potentially some customers at the beginning you would receive some pushback, how were you able to overcome that pushback on that particular implementation?
When we first started, it was to, like everybody, we want to reduce paper, cut back on costs with mailing invoices and tickets, and just the time that it took when customers would sign for the ticket on the job site, toss it in the ground, and then we'd receive our ticket back here, and then the back office people would want to sign ticket or information. Then our people in the office were going through the tickets, copying them or attaching them with the invoices and sending them out, and reducing postage costs and delays and time like that. That was our first reason why we wanted to
Can I
go
help
to
you?
it.
Sure, hang on.
When COVID hit, then it was just a matter of nobody was sure how it was being transmitted, whether it was paper, everything like that. That was the big push. Most people wanted it. We still had some people who didn't like it and didn't want it, but with support from our owners, we pretty much mandated that that's the way it would have to be, that everything was going all e-ticketing.
All right. So in your particular experience, it's really the owners backing, the one that probably, you know, allow you to stay the course then.
Yes. We had some larger customers were looking for it already, just because of the way they had to process their tickets. We do a lot of warehouse work, so the big firms were looking to have all of their billing done electronically. So those were the easy ones. It was more the medium-sized companies that didn't want to change and were used to just having that paper ticket in their hand.
Very good. Thank you, Jeff. We're going to be coming back. I mean, ideally, we're going to try to keep it dynamic, and as we go through the different questions, we're going to keep going around the room. So thanks, Jeff, for that. Jerry Howard from IMI, you want to introduce yourself and start with the same question that Jeff just addressed, which is, you know, how's been the process for IMI to implement e-ticket? Where did you start and why?
All right, thanks. Yeah, my name is Jerry Howard. I'm the Vice President of IT for Irving Materials. And we're based in the Midwest, and very similar story to what Jeff was saying, that we were starting down the path for e-tickets probably maybe a year and a half before COVID hit. Tried to work a little bit with the, in our case, the Department of Transportation. We do operations in about 4 states, but we started in Indiana. And we wanted to try to get with them because we thought they would be the least receptive to being willing to go to e-tickets. But we were actually pretty surprised on 2 fronts. Number one, they were probably more interested in going to e-tickets than we ever thought they would be, because they see the storage of paper tickets as being like an undue burden, you know, being able to try to find tickets that they have to be accountable for, maintaining those in storage areas, and, you know, basically just, you know, spending money just to keep them on hand when no one really is going to look them up much. The other thing that they really started to point out to us, oddly enough, is they were not nearly as interested in the ready mix side, but they're interested in the HMA, the asphalt side. And that's, probably because they do a lot more business on that side than they do on the concrete side. So they were far more interested in talking about that. And but we talked to them a little bit more about the concrete side. And when COVID hit, the Department of Transportation, much like Jeff said, they were pretty much almost came out with an edict that don't show up to the job with paper. So we kind of took a budding project, an interesting project, and flipped it on its side and went from an interesting project to we need to find a solution as soon as possible. So anyway, that's kind of how we got our start, and we're much, I think, like Jeff said, we had some very strong interest and a push from leadership in our company. And, I would say if someone's interested in doing this, this is not for the faint of heart, but it is worth the effort. It's just one of those things it's best to push through it, but if you don't push, you're not going to get through it.
Got it. Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it. All right, Roger, lastly, please introduce yourself and let's answer the same question.
Good afternoon. My name is, again, Roger Lastly. I'm with Advanced Ready Mix. We're based, just as Jerry said, we're based in the Midwest, primarily in Kentucky and in Southern Indiana. Similar situation, I guess. We began the road about a year or so before COVID started with our invoicing. We began with sending out all of our invoices and statements, emailing all of those out. Just again, as our owner, she was on a big push to get everything paperless. So we started down the invoicing and statement route. COVID hit, so we just went head first into the e-ticketing. I feel like the starting from the invoicing side helped us with our customer experience, because they were already used to seeing their statements and things like that. And yeah, I mean, it was just as Jerry said, it is definitely a battle at first. I think one of the keys to our success with it was our back office training and our driver training. We still do offer paper tickets to anyone that is dead set to have them. But we have very few people. So yeah, I mean, for me, absolutely 100% was a training because those guys that were against it, that wanted that paper ticket in their hand, when our drivers were able to show them the information on their tablets, show them that they got the email to their inbox that they had their ticket on hand, that it was just a matter of looking at their phone. It was definitely it definitely helped smooth things over. So my piece of advice would be is make sure that the face of your company, your drivers are trained adequately to help with that transition. And yeah, it is just as Jerry said, is definitely a battle worth fighting for sure.
There you go. So Roger, one thing that caught my attention is you mentioned, you offer the possibility of paper tickets for anyone that's, requested. And from when you guys went live to, where you are right now, have you seen a trend? Is it, kind of the same percentage of customers that might be asking for paper ticket that, they were at the beginning? Have you seen that decreasing, or any insight that you might have into how that's going?
We haven't, I guess when we first started with COVID, just as everybody else, we didn't allow anybody to exchange a piece of paper. And we've just had a few projects. The Army Corps of Engineers has not adopted e-tickets on the job site they're working on in Louisville here. So they still want a paper ticket. It's in our experience, it's been project specific, and whether it be the engineering firm, the owner, but we have very, very few paper tickets that our drivers handle. I would say 5% of our ticketing that goes out is in paper form.
Got it. Very good. Thank you. All right, so we're gonna move to Alan White. Alan White, if you can please introduce yourself, the role that you play at Delisi, and then how did you start the journey towards e-ticketing, and what was the primary motivator to do that?
Yeah, thanks, Luis. My name is Alan White, and I lead the IT organization here at Delisi. I've been here for 12 months now. Background is primarily multinational oil and gas, and then a few startups I've done here and there. When I came to Delisi, very similar story to much of the other folks that we've heard today. Delisi had been trying to implement digital ticketing for 4+ years. And so I really wanted to understand, why were we not able to get over the hump with this? What is the sort of triggering factor? And really it heard two things right off the bat. One, our drivers won't adopt the technology. There's no way they're going to be able to learn it. And then two, our customers won't accept it either. And so I said, well, let's go chat to both of those groups and sort of see and get some feedback, right? And lo and behold, we talked to those groups of customers and our drivers, and they say, well, show me what it looks like. How's it going to benefit me? And when we really started putting it into the context of that, it was really a mindset shift and a culture shift. Honestly, the technical part's easy. It's the adoption and the cultural change that comes along with it. And so we really started approaching it as through the process of an innovation cycle, right? If I can get sort of innovators within our company and early adopters on board, really there's going to be a snowball effect with the sort of early majority and late majority of folks coming after that. So we specifically picked out a region within our organization that we'd worked with before that was really wanting to get on board with this, and they had a good set of customers too. And so we implemented in our northern region, and a lot of times you get curveballs thrown at you. The day we implemented, it was actually a completely different set of drivers that was up in that region. And so we had to train them on the fly. And that had its bumps, but it worked out pretty well. And now what we've created is a demand for this product across the organization. So we had a driver summit 2 weeks ago, and almost to a T, every driver was coming up to me saying, hey, we've heard about digital ticketing. When's it coming to my region? Hey, why is Tulsa Metro getting it ahead of Oklahoma City Metro? And so we have that demand in place. And so now we just, we're going to sort of utilize that and continue to roll it out across those areas. But really the biggest piece was cultural change.
Very good. And, that was a very nice segue into kind of the next conversation and what I'd like to go around the room in here. So we understand a little bit from the four companies, some of the motivators, some of the context in which this initiative started, and especially, with the pandemic that hit everyone, we're pretty familiar with a lot of the things that happen around the world that prompted this or accelerated this change. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that each and every one of you have been facing as part of this. And, and as we get into the challenges, there's also advice that you can potentially share with some of the member organizations at NRMCA. So what I heard from you, Alan, is, well, I've heard three things already from all of you: executive backing, the importance of having a very good training program and outreach, for customer adoption, and then the OCM piece, the organizational change management. But I want to kind of go around again, starting with Jeff. Jeff, if you can share with us some of the challenges that you've encountered and some of the tools or processes that you have used to overcome those challenges.
One of the big challenges we had was people actually wanting to get their signature on the tablet. So the same thing with the paper, with passing the tablet out the window and having them sign it and touch it. And then drivers were also the same way. Well, hey, I'm taking my personal device, handing it to someone, they're touching it. So that was a challenge that we kind of went around with by including that we can hit a button on ours where it says no signature, but at the same time, we can take a picture of the job site. So the picture is there and it goes on the ticket and also grabs the GPS coordinates. So a lot of times we always tell the drivers, hey, whoever the foreman is or whoever signed the tickets at the pump, get them in the picture. And by doing that, that was a big way to cut down, well, hey, the paper, I'm just getting rid of it. I don't get it back. Getting the tablet and letting somebody touch because we assign our tablets to our drivers. They're not assigned to the truck, it's assigned to the driver. It's their personal device to take home. So once we started doing that, I think like Alan said, having the drivers buy in and being able to do that, and they didn't have to worry about keeping track of the paper tickets and turning them in at the end of the day. It was just point, touch, and go.
Very good. Now, and that's a very creative way to go around, the lack of a signature with a picture in the GPS coordinates. Now, from an internal perspective, that's got to be extremely helpful. But from an external perspective, either for customers or some of the inspectors, has that been also an adequate solution in the cases where you wouldn't capture an actual signature for anyone accepting that delivery?
Yes. The only kind of pushback we ever get is from our AR department. In New Jersey, the lien laws require a signed delivery ticket. So that's been a gray area that we've been trying to, it really needs to be addressed through the local authorities that I think most people are probably saying that your drivers or the people on job sites will sign with a squiggle or Mickey Mouse or something like that. That in my mind, if I have a GPS coordinate that the truck is here, I have a picture there, that's going to hold up a little bit more than a squiggle. But getting that into the laws on the books that that's an acceptable signature is a big push we have right now, especially in New Jersey.
Got it. Thank you, Jeff. Jerry, if you want to share with us some of the challenges throughout these processes and ways to overcome those challenges.
Sure. And maybe just give a little bit of a background too on, it's interesting to hear Jeff's story because we were, when we were looking at how we were going to deploy this, we had two big, water thresholds moments. We were trying to figure out, do we distribute the tablets to the drivers like Jeff's group has done, or do we lock them in the truck? And, by locking them in the truck, then we have huge problems with, getting the traditional paper signature. So we wrestled with that quite a bit. And then ultimately we ended up going with locking the tablets in the trucks. We just felt like the problems that we would have, hand a tablet to somebody, they drop it, it breaks, whatever the case may be. We just decided to lock them in the trucks. We didn't know if that was going to be the right way. We just kind of rolled the dice. And so far we're pretty happy with doing that. But like I said, that also presents a pretty big challenge about, human nature is that, a signature is a way to confirm a transaction, and the transaction's not confirmed unless a signature takes place. And, we had some, pushback from our accounting folks, because another aspect I'll talk to here in a little bit is the safety and liability statements that are probably on all of our paper tickets. How do you get that information across on the e-ticket? And that's a pretty significant challenge, but doable. So, so we kind of did the same thing Jeff did. We thought, a circumstantial delivery, if you add up all these pieces of evidence, it's probably going to be better than, like a Mickey Mouse signature. And we did actually a study of our signatures and found that less than 33% of our tickets got signatures. And some of those were just squiggly lines and other things like that. So there's kind of a perception that, boy, if you're putting a ticket out there, then everybody's signing it. And, that's probably not very close to accurate. Maybe close to accurate if you're sitting inside an office or a building, but it's not very accurate when you're out in the field. So, so that was kind of a big challenge for us. Another really big challenge for us, we do a little bit of highway work, and various INDOT, Indiana Department of Transportation inspectors were adamant that if you don't bring paper, then don't bring concrete. And these are the same folks that we were told by the management at Indiana Department of Transportation that you are not to bring paper to. So we are caught a little bit between a rock and a hard place in some of those instances, and actually had a couple significant standoffs almost, where we weren't sure which direction the project was going to go. So those are probably our challenges, training and resistance to change. We're probably, pretty close to that as well. So.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Appreciate it. How about you, Roger? What has been some of the challenges that Advanced Ready-Mix has had throughout this process and ways in which you've overcome those?
So yeah, again, obviously is getting everyone acclimated to using the paperless ticketing, and that's probably the biggest challenge. As far as, I guess, procedural issues that we've found is it's very important to get the customer set up correctly in your system prior to them ordering concrete. I mean, several times you'd send a truck out, the email ticket would go to the wrong email address, or they wouldn't have gotten the information, and then here they sit without a ticket, and so that's just one of the issues. Getting property release, getting all that information completed before, because again, we operate just as Jerry mentioned, we lock our tablets in our trucks. So, depending on the job site, a residential job site, getting the property release signed and capturing that signature, because some of the systems don't capture those property release signatures to where you can see them after the fact on the back end. So that was a little issue working through. I would say primarily as far as being on site, one of the issues is capturing things like water additions or any comments a driver wants to make, because typically, the only way the customer gets their ticket is once it is submitted, then they get the email that is sent to them. Well, once the ticket is submitted, the driver can't go and record any additional water additions or anything like that, or anything else that were to happen. So getting on the site, initially on the site, and making sure, all that takes place first is definitely, has definitely been a hurdle in some instances. And again, the driver training is the biggest thing, in my opinion. The driver training, having them understand how the ticketing system works, and when they accept the ticket, it's done at that point. That's a major key factor.
Very good. Thank you. And Alan, I know you mentioned, as part of your in-train here, you did mention some of the challenges, but anything you'd like to add that wasn't covered as challenges and ways to overcome that in this process?
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. I heard some comments that I'll sort of talk directly to, because we certainly had this challenge. So when it comes to a back office functionality, accounting, AR, we certainly had a tail wagging the dog type scenario, right? Where we had our accounting folks saying, hey, there's no way you're going to be able to do this because it's going to destroy all our processes and it's going to cause all this problem. And I have 100 million reports that I need that you're never going to be able to get. And so we walked through with those folks, well, what are these reports and what are you using them for? And once we started having that conversation with them, it turns out, hey, what if we can give you that same data to make those decisions with a fraction of those, SSRS reports that are very sort of old school? What if we can give you dashboards? What if we can give you data at your fingertips? What if we can give you guys time back in your day to focus on higher value tasks? And so for us, that was, again, a big cultural win in, hey, we can't do this because we have this, very customized back-end process that we'll never be able to unwind. And lo and behold, we did unwind it and improved it significantly.
Very nice. And, I love when I hear that piece, because again, it's whenever we're talking about cultural change, and some of the stakeholders. You mentioned specifically drivers and back office and the executive team. I mean, that's it's really important to think about, you know, how for the success of something like this and for some of the motivators, you know, what happens inside the company is as important as what happens outside the company as well. And with that, you know, I want to expand that stakeholder adoption, you know, and response to customers and DOTs. Again, some of you already have indirectly touched on these, but if we can go around the room and hear what's been the response from customers and what's been the response from DOTs. Again, I know, Jeff, you mentioned on your particular case, you know, on New Jersey, you have that challenge with lead management, but again, if you can elaborate a little bit more into specific outside stakeholder response and some of the things that you learned from that experience.
One of the big things we learned was a lot of time. Well, one, the sales guys were always the first one to try and say, "Hey, the customer has to have the paper tickets," and the support from our ownership to basically tell the sales guys, basically go back out to the job, tell them they're not getting the paper ticket. And we actually had some say, "Well, okay, we're not going to deliver to you." And they were like, well, wait a second, you have to deliver. So that backing from the ownership and pushing it down was a big change. And one of the best part was to contact the back office people. So yeah, it's great that we can notify the person on the job site that the truck's on the way. And for DOT, here's the batch weights. But getting to the person in the office who's paying the bills, who has to track down 10 foremen turning in their paperwork, which they never do, getting them was the biggest hook we had, where they're like, "Wait a second, what's this ticket I just received?" We're like, "Well, that's that job that just completed out there." And they're like, "Wait a second, that truck just finished pouring, got back to the plant, and now we have your ticket already?" That was the best thing, because they realized how fast they could stop copying tickets, processing their invoices, all of that sped up on that side. So that was a big thing.
Very good. Awesome.
One other part to that too. I think it was Jerry mentioned about getting to the right email address. One thing that we also talked to our customers was setting up generic email addresses, because you have high turnover. So you're sending it to John Smith at ABC company. He's no longer there. So we talk people into saying, okay, set up like a tickets or whatever you want to call it. So this way it goes there, and educating the customers how they can process the tickets better on their side has been a big help also.
That's a very good point. All right, Jerry, outside stakeholders like customers, DOT, anything you would like to share on that area?
Yeah, it's I think Jeff talked a little bit about the sales group, and sales folks generally don't want to talk about something unless they're like the experts at it. So it's really hard to get them to promote any of this moving down the road unless you really have to have them become their own experts. Either the sales manager trains the sales reps or however you do it. But they've got to kind of be the people that will promote this and really tout it up. Because ultimately it is better. I mean, whenever you get away from a two-dimensional delivery system, which is essentially what a piece of paper is, now you've got a much more feature-rich capability with electronic version.
Right. Absolutely.
We can gather weather information. When the concrete was poured, which can help everybody down the road. When you've got third-party testers at the site, instead of somebody trying to chase down that one part of a 4-part ticket, now you can pass this information on to them electronically. It's the biggest obstacle is education and understanding. There's certainly an aspect for cost savings here, but we really never approached it that way. We just kind of approached it. This is just a better thing for all of us to do, and it's a trend that we all face in every part of our lives. Whether none of us get anywhere near the number of paper invoices, whether it's utilities or credit cards or anything along those lines. So this is just us kind of catching up with the advancements of the digital age, where we can kind of distribute things in a way we couldn't do them very good before. So NDOT inspectors, they're a different breed. When you get into that world, it's their world, and third-party inspectors, companies don't ever want to cross them because they can make your lives miserable. So pretty much, what they say goes. And if you've got an NDOT inspector that wants paper, then we had a couple here. They were more than a thorn in our side to try to make progress on this.
Got it. Well, and you touched on something really interesting. Perhaps, I leave it up more towards the end, but, it's really is a paradigm shift if we can shape the industry to go in this direction, moving away from that paper and having this digital information opens up a lot of possibilities around reporting, around being more proactive, being able to analyze trends. And, when you guys are talking about the customers, Alan White mentioned a few minutes ago, for internal stakeholders, in this case, the back office or the AR department, how, you can sweeten the deal by being able to provide information in a different way and probably, take even some of their time away from repetitive tasks. It'll be interesting to see as you guys continue on this journey, how many customers are taking the advantage of taking this information, not only from a transactional perspective, but even from an analytical perspective. So very, very good points.
Hey, Louise, you might even check if anybody has any kind of questions, or throw something in the chat, or something along those lines. If someone has any kind of things,
absolutely. That's a very good point. So so anyone is, because basically what we're trying to do in here is going around over this journey, from motivations, to the specific experience challenges, and the idea will be to wrap it up with any potential advice for NRMCA members that want to embark in this journey, and basically kind of build upon lessons learned from the companies that are basically kind of trailblazing this initiative. But if anyone has any questions, we can either raise a hand virtually here in Zoom, or you guys can throw it on the chat as well. And so I'm gonna kind of go back to give the opportunity for both Roger and Alan to also, kind of talk about this experience with external stakeholders, and then we can come back into any potential questions. So Roger, you want to go next?
Yeah, it's funny, I guess, on the on a lot of the larger content that we're experiencing is a lot of the larger contractors that have civil groups and different departments like that. We're actually, with the e-ticketing now, are able to be integrated within their back office systems, just like they would with any aggregate deliveries, dirt deliveries, or whatever. Our e-ticketing can communicate now with their software programs, and so getting your customer, their back office, just as it was mentioned previously, the back office buy-in, that's the easy part. Because once they see that just as I think it was mentioned earlier about setting up a particular inbox for all these tickets to go to, once you get that established, it's definitely a advantage to them, and they see it very quickly. And we all know typically the back office, rules. So then your superintendents, they start to climb on board as well. And another big thing that that we found was very important with getting buy-in is the QR readers on the tablets themselves, making sure that information was accurate, making sure there was no issues with communication with your batch panels or anything like that. Because again, they can scan your QR code on their tablet, and they can see, the testers can see, and they can download the PDF version of the batch weights information. So and again, that goes back to your driver training, making sure they know how to operate and how to navigate the tablet. I mean, it's just those multiple details that will make your implementation successful.
Very good. Thank you. So let's go to Alan. Alan, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, just real quick, kind of chat to the customer point of view. So as everyone has said, you know, training of our drivers was critical. As really our drivers are at that pointy end of the stick and interacting with customers. And more often than not, the person they're interacting with isn't actually the customer; it's the sub of a sub, right? And so I went on quite a few jobs where, you know, our driver is talking to the sub and you know, saying to the sub, "Hey, I need you to sign this tablet," and the sub's going, "Well, where's my paper ticket? I need to give it to, you know, the guy that I'm the sub for." And our drivers, you know, would turn around and go, "Hey, we don't do that anymore, and here's why, and here's where the benefit it is for you and your you know, the company that you're subbing from." And so our drivers were our biggest advocates out there. And then in working with our sales folks, so every salesperson is going to tell you that their customer is the most important customer, no matter how big or small they are, right? And so what we were cognizant of is, you know, that feedback of the customers of generating noise around why it wouldn't work. So we went and did some data analysis on those customers, and really it was, you know, customers that generate less than 10% of our revenue were the noisiest, and the vast majority of them were, "Hey, yeah, we want this, let's do it." And so once we had that data, it was an easy conversation.
Very nice. Thank you. So we did, Andrew, we did get a question in here already on the chat window. So thanks for igniting that piece. And one of the questions that we have in here is, how much does the safety of ticket takers and others on the job site play into the adoption of e-ticketing for drivers? So whoever wants to answer that from the panel, if it resonates to you.
I believe that from my standpoint is as far as safety for our drivers, they don't, when they get every load, they would typically, you know, pull under their plant to get loaded. They would get out of the truck. They would have to go step inside a door or go to another building to grab their delivery ticket or something like that. Well, and they're doing this entire process while their truck is being loaded. So there is some safety factor to that, but all that's eliminated. They stay in their truck. Their ticket is right there on their tablet. They just pull under. There's no need to get out of the truck. And once they're loaded, they pull over to their wash down area, and they're, you know, the next process starts. So we felt like efficiency and safety were probably our primary benefits at this point from e-ticketing.
Yeah, we had a very similar experience. There was a large safety element for the drivers in that the number of sort of transactions we were asking them to conduct while they're on a job site is significantly reduced. So they're way more focused. Their risk exposure is reduced as well. So that was a large benefit for us too.
Awesome. All right. So I mean, we have a relatively short time frame in here. So I want to make sure that I have enough time to do the kind of the parting thoughts for this panel, that we have enough for that piece. And the last piece for you guys is, if you had a piece of advice, and again, a lot of these probably will sound repetitive by now because you've been touching as part of your journey into some, again, the way you overcome challenges and some input. But if you had a piece of advice for other NRMCA members that might want to take this endeavor, what would that be? So let's start with you, Jeff.
I think it's a must. The change is always hard, but getting that first job, that first customer, that first plant, doing whatever you can to get that going is well worth the time and effort you're going to do it. Like someone said before, I mean, we order stuff on Amazon all the time that's dropped off at your house. You take a picture of it and you're fine with that. This industry is so backwards on a lot of things that we just got to continually to push it forward.
So bite the bullet.
Exactly.
All right. And it's interesting because, Jeff, Gary is asking you a question here in the chat, which is, I think you're the only one. At least we heard directly from IMI and first skin in the panel that they lock the tablet in the truck. But you did mention that you treat the device as a personal device, meaning you hand it over and sign that to the driver. So what's been your experience managing that user-centric instead of truck-centric?
At first, it was like, oh, what are you going to do, spy on me? But once they realized, just like you said, you pull under, you don't have to get out of your truck now in the rain or the snow while your truck's loading to go over to the ticket tube. It's all right there. Don't have to keep track of the paperwork in my cab. We do all of our start times through it. They have email on it, so all of our company email is on that. Our payroll system we have an app on the phone for them, on the tablet, where they can schedule their personal days, check anything, download any forms. We also use it as our communication device. We use Zello.
Nice.
So it's like their personal communication tool that they've really accepted, and they love having it now.
Got it. Very good.
Luis, there's
right,
one other comment or question in the chat, and I think this kind of speaks to the interaction with DOTs and something I think we'll probably want to talk about here as we get closer to ending the conversation. But would be curious in the panel's interaction with DOTs. What have the pain points been, and is it something that has been a challenge or an opportunity, or what are the frustrations or advantages?
So yeah, Andrew, we had a very brief and quick conversation here in Oklahoma where we basically said, by all means, we can still provide paper tickets, but we will be charging a $5 environmental fee per paper ticket, and very quickly ended that conversation. And they said, okay, we're on board.
Yeah, and I think the question is a very interesting one in northern Pennsylvania, I believe, northeastern Pennsylvania, the example, and being, when the DOT is mandating to have to adopt e-ticketing through specific providers, and then there's that cost associated. And now that all of you have your own solution for e-ticketing, have you come into a conflict where, for whatever reason, you're unable to fulfill through that solution, any requirement from either a DOT or some other entity? Have you faced that, and how have you overcome that?
I see. Yeah, we have not faced that yet down here in Oklahoma. I expect it's probably something we are gonna run into, and I think there's probably
Eventually.
some development efforts. The question is on whose side of those development efforts coming, right?
Correct. And and this is a very interesting problem statement. So I think that was Jay kind of posting on the chat window, because at the end of the day, and this is what NRMCA, is adding value here by bringing us together. I love the way Jeff framed it. I mean, we need to get on top of this. We need to get on board. We have an opportunity to get it in a smart way, meaning, having these type of conversations and making sure that we are in a situation where we can in some way standardize the way that we exchange digital data. And then if we have a saying on how we standardize that data, then these type of challenges, as time goes on, shouldn't be coming this way, ideally. And that's kind of the end goal. One of the big end goals of the IT task group is precisely that, to drive this type of conversations. And right now it's very high level. It's a panel where we basically share the experience, and we're starting from the premise of saying that e-ticketing is not a technical challenge as much as an adoption and a cultural challenge. And I think that from a lot of you, what I'm hearing is, when you emphasize the cultural change, the importance of training your drivers, your sales force, the importance of having executive backing, the importance of socializing this with your customer base and having that relationship and that conversation, I think you're kind of reaffirming what the original premise is. And if that's what it is, then, ideally we should work on that standard that allows us to basically make this transition, kind of a more logical one. So again, that's the end goal. That's what we're trying to build towards. It might not be going at the speed that a lot of us are wishing, but I think that the pandemic provided an opportunity to overcharge some of the demand in the market, and we just have to basically go and take it, like Jeff mentioned a few minutes ago. All right, so I want to make sure that we go around, because again, the time is continues to click in here. And this is very, very fascinating to have the opportunity to hear from all of you. So if we still have Jerry Howard here on the call, you want to kind of share your parting thoughts and any potential advice for other members of NRMCA?
Sure. Maybe just to add a little bit on to the DOTs, I would say communication up and down the ranks, in the field, at the management level, to try to make some headway. If you can ever get the DOT to kind of put some of these into the specs, that always helps, but that takes quite a long time. But as far as the resistance that we found, that was in the field, the resistance was probably the highest of any of our customers. And oddly enough, at the management level, it was the most supportive. So go figure. So anyway, it's don't underestimate the effort. But even though the effort is significant, it's well worth the end result. And it's almost like once you get to this chapter, then you don't look back at paper tickets anymore.
Awesome. That's a great goal. All right, Roger, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I'll go back to, I think I've probably said it 10 times already. Training. When you're implementing e-ticketing, the last thing you want is for someone within your organization to be uneducated on how the system works, especially when a customer confronts them about an issue they're having with an e-ticket, or when they're trying to convince a customer to go to e-ticketing and they're not 100% on board. You get your drivers trained, you get your back office trained, so that any issue that the customer could have during their experience, if you've got members of your organization that can help them with that, it will smooth the process out. And when the driver gets out there on the job site, we've had several hundreds of testimonials with our drivers. When they get out on the job site, when we first implemented, the customer wanted their ticket and the driver handed their tablet, said, see, this is see how cool this is. Here, I can show you everything that you need. They were experienced with navigating through their tablets, and I can put these comments in here. I can do this. I can do that. The driver will sell it.
Awesome.
Okay, Luis, this is Jill from Sistine. I just want to comment on this DOT, how to send tickets to DOT, but DOT may dictate some providers and they do have a fee when you send ticket over. I think the one thing probably NRMCA can help is to standardize the API. So, no matter who is the vendor or even the producers develop some, electronic ticketing functions themselves. If we could standardize the API, then it's much easier, no matter who's the vendor, who developed it, then we can send the data to DOT using a standardized format. Then, then it's up to the provider to say, okay, we charge the customer or we don't, right? Then for DOT, it's much easier. We could understand why DOT wants to do that. They want to only connect with the limited providers, because if everybody comes with a different ticket format, then there was many development work they have to do in order to connect.
Absolutely. Integration.
Ticket, integration. So I just want to add that.
Very good. Yes. And, part of what I wanted to do in here, we also have Matt Bayer from Whole Hub here in the call. I don't know if Chris Strickland is still from Command in here. We have Jill Ingalls. And I wanted to open it up at the end of the conversation to kind of get an update on some of the national polls of what's happening around e-ticketing from a spec perspective. So, that's kind of part of what I'd like to have in here. And let's just give a minute or two here to Alan White for parting thoughts. And then we're going to open it up on Matt, if you're up for that, if you can give us kind of an update on the national side. We'll move to Jill and then we can wrap it up. That was a very good point. Very good point, Jill, Chan. Thank you.
Yeah,
all right, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Luis. Yeah, I'll just add real fast that that first rollout, that first deployment, I would encourage everyone, it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be many, many challenges with it. And I think being clear with everybody up front of, hey, there are going to be issues. There are going to be things that go wrong. But the important part is that you know, the folks involved view it as a, hey, this is an us thing, so that when those things do go wrong, it's, hey, see, I told you this wouldn't work. It's, hey, how do we figure this out? And we had an amazing group of folks that were doing that across the company, and so very quickly got any issues we had knocked out. And the drivers saw that, you know, our customers saw that, and so, you know, they were all on board from the outset.
Thank you. So very good. So listen, for Jeff, Jerry, Roger, Alan, thanks a lot for taking the time today to share your experience with us. I found this exercise very useful, and I know, you know, it takes some time for you from doing some other stuff in here. And again, but I think being able to share this information in between, you know, NRMCA members is really invaluable, and I look forward for more opportunities to continue to collaborate and learn more around this. So with that, I want to pass it on to Matt. Matt, if you wanna kind of give us a brief update on the national side, if you have anything to share,
so
from a software provider perspective.
I've got 2 cents, and then also on the call is Skip Poe, who is also intimately involved with Federal Highway and working on the national level to coordinate some peer exchanges and those sorts of things. I think a lot of folks on the call have been at, so I'm going to pass it over to him, and he can kind of talk at that national level as well. So AASHTO is actually coming out with a standard called the ADIF, AASHTO Data Integration Format, which I think starts to address a lot of those concerns with making sure that you know, we've got a standardized set of information going to the various disparate DOTs, so that there's, you know, the right fields are getting to the right spot at the right time. And so that's over the next several months that will be sort of rolling out. And so I think that is definitely in the works. And then Skip, I don't know if you wanted to add a couple of notes on that as well, if you're on.
Yeah, let me get my screens the way I had it all set up to start with. Yes, Rebecca Embacher from Minnesota DOT is leading that effort, and it's the most detailed spec you've probably ever seen, because there is no stone unturned on defining every term that you want to define, all the bells and whistles. It wants to cover everything, so with all the different systems out there and products out there, it wants to make sure it incorporates everything. And also it gets into, like, a state like Minnesota, who wants to do every possibly thing that you can do with technology and data. They want to cover it all and bring it into one system. So they have the capability to, in their state, the truckers, even if they're delivering a product, they're considering that part of Davis-Bacon, they can track that, where another state may say, you know what, we don't want all that. So it's moved forward. There's been a team effort over the last 2 years to get this to this stage, and it's out for balloting for the states to vote on that to determine if they want to move it forward or not. And there should be a lot of coming out on that in the next couple of months, because we're all assuming that the states are going to pass that and move it forward.
So Skip, this is Jill Ingalls. We met in California at the Caltrans meeting about a month ago. How can we get involved more with this AASHTO spec? Because I've reviewed it since that meeting, and I do find, you know, Rebecca's done a great job at covering every item, but I do find it gets into such fine details for each product line, aggregate, asphalt, and ready mix, whereas some of these items should not be required. They should be optional. So I'm assuming someone's having a further conversation of that, and how do suppliers and vendors of e-ticketing tools get involved to help work on this before it becomes a full spec that not all of us can satisfy?
So one thing about that is there has been a team that the group that's on that email list is very extensive. I mean, it started out two and a half years ago. There were about 5 of us on that list, and now I think it's well over 200. But one thing they tried to do is they wanted everything, because in Minnesota, that's what they wanted, was everything. Mm-hmm. But realized that Alabama didn't want everything, and other states were in that same boat. So when push comes to shove, there should be this either a working task force or, and we talked about this in California, external stakeholders where you're reaching out discussing where are you in the state of practice in your particular state and what do you want to move forward on. So it may be a case where in California, they're not interested in the Davis-Bacon, or they don't want such data on aggregate or concrete. And then roughly those fields don't have to be turned on in the system, because the state has the ability of what they want to turn on and what they don't want to turn on. So part of that's going to be this system can cover everything you can possibly imagine, but the state doesn't have to choose to implement all portions of it.
Okay, my only worry is that some states are just going to adopt the entire thing because it's less effort than going through it piece by piece. So
I think that's the external stakeholder, the states reaching out to the industry and having, as we talked about in California, is doing more of that, having task force to talk about the implementation, where you want to go with it. If that communication is open, then roughly, and it may come to a point 5 years from now, you know, you may have the point, yes, we want to do that, but starting off, absolutely no way. So I think that's where the two sides have to work together to advance the implementation.
And I think there's a lot of good examples out there of like taking that whole big spec, right, and boiling it down to the essential elements that make sense for that DOT. So, you know, Delaware has a very simple spec on like, it's like literally 2 pages with like, it lists out the, 15 or 20 fields. And this is hot mix, by the way. But it's got very, very simplistic sort of notion. So, there's those sort of examples that are out there, right? And maybe this group can take a look at, kind of what's been done on the hot mix side, right? And say, okay, this is what makes sense on the ready mix side. Here's the 15 fields that are critical, and kind of, work at it that way.
I agree. So that's maybe what I'd like to cover, and someone else might already have that document that compares all the fields per state. Does anybody, do I know, do any of the vendors have that document with the required fields per state, per product that we can all share rather than myself starting from scratch? It's been on my list a long time and I haven't done it.
Yeah, Jill, this is Mike Schultz with Command Alcon. I have that document.
Ooh, wonderful.
And I've also got some that we can share from disparate, the various states out there.
Yeah, I have some as well. I could share with you, Jill.
So this is a great way to put it back to Andrew here and talk about what's coming for our next in-person meeting right here. Unless Jill, I don't know if you want to add anything else from the Peer Exchange California session that you attended in Sacramento.
Yeah, there's a handful of us on this meeting who were there, and I think it was a place where, in this answering Jay's question from earlier, there were vendors, there were DOT reps, we had Skip and a few others from a higher federal level, or, just to give advice. And we were able to open the conversation to talk about everybody's objectives and everybody's concerns. So it was nice that we got the objectives discussed and the first few steps of how to get there. And then additionally, we as suppliers who do have to take on the burden of paying for the initial development and the per ticket or the per ton or per yard cost moving forward, we really wanted to get that in front of the DOT and make them aware of it. Caltrans specifically didn't really care. They feel as though it might just be a new cost for us in producing material in this environment. Whereas, like I mentioned in the chat, Washington State's DOT was worked with us and understood what we were faced with when COVID happened, and that we had to immediately jump on the bandwagon and either pay for development, completely pivot our IT time, and then start to pay transactionally. And they implemented a line item and a pay item for certain DOT jobs. So that didn't cover the fact that we were having to push all tickets for a particular region and pay for that, but it at least offset it until we got to a comfortable place. And like Jill Zhang mentioned, if NRMCA helps us to come up with more simplified standards, then potentially everyone, whether you're a large supplier or a small supplier, your IT's efforts and costs and things could potentially be minimized when you do need to go implement the full project. But it was a great exchange and meeting. I think we had 4 suppliers, obviously the DOT and a few people in the room, and we had good representation from everybody using different vendors to satisfy what's needed. So that's just what it's going to take, though, involvement.
Jill, thanks so much for that update. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who's participated today. Thanks very much to our panelists. I know some folks have had to drop off. We just appreciate everyone taking the time this afternoon. We have recorded this session and we'll make it available to attendees. One quick thing, Matt, Jill, and Mike, if you all wouldn't mind also sending me the documents we referenced, and that way NRMCA can house those centrally. And then I just want to give everyone a couple FYIs on upcoming meetings. The first will be an upcoming meeting in person, our winter meeting of the Business Advancement Committee and the IT Task Group. This will take place in Dallas on December 14th. For more information on that, please let me know. I'm happy to send it out to you. And of course, if you're not on our Business Advancement Committee distribution list, I'd be happy to add you to that. Secondly, we'll be doing a follow-on session on e-ticketing, and that will revolve around this discussion of standardization. And we want to make sure that we are doing what we can from the NRMCA perspective to be the voice of the industry as we do move toward standardization or formulating a standard set of data for e-tickets as DOTs can move forward and looking to adopt e-ticketing more broadly for concrete. And then, of course, our spring meeting will take place in Las Vegas at NRMCA's annual convention. With that, I think we're wrapped up and appreciate everyone's time. Look forward to seeing you all in a future meeting shortly.
Thanks, Andrew. Good stuff.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Great meeting.
Thank you.
Luis. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks, everyone.
See you guys. Thanks, Luis.
Bye.
See you.